Hi everyone. Whether you are building a web application, a REST API, or a microservice, securing your app is crucial. Spring Security is a powerful and customizable framework for authentication and access control in Java applications. It provides everything you need to manage authentication, authorization, and other security aspects like CSRF protection, session management, and many more. So today, we are going to learn and implement Spring Security in a REST API. We have already developed REST API in EMS version 6.0. Refer playlist and watch EMS 6.0 video if not watched yet. Let's start with the coding part. This is EMS 4.0. Execute it and open the Swagger documentation. Now application started on port 8080. Go to browser and this is the URL to open the Swagger documentation. So under employee controller, we can see we have three APIs. One is get to get the list of employees, post to add the employee, and third API is of also of type post to send an email. So now these are the three APIs we want to secure and not want to make it public. So let's create one more endpoint to get the basic information of the company so that we can make these three endpoints secure and one about us endpoint public. Open employee controller, create a new endpoint of type get. So we created one endpoint about us whose return type is string and the mapping is about us. We created one string holding company information and this information we are passing in the response. Re-execute this application and refresh the Swagger documentation. So here we can see one another get endpoint about us. Let's execute. Yes, it is working and returning response as company name and YouTube URL. So total we have 4 endpoints now in employee controller. So first three related to employee list, add employee and send email we want to secure, and last one is about us, we want to make it public. Now very first step in Spring Security implementation, add Spring Security starter dependency in the pom.xml file. So use org spring framework .boot package and remove its version and refresh pom.xml file. Stop the application, restart the application and see the application logs very carefully. So after adding the security dependency, we executed the application and here in the console you can see a one log which is showing the password. So it means this is the auto generated password. So in order to access all the REST endpoints, we need to use this password. Let's try. So if you will refresh your page, automatically Spring Security will redirect you on the login page. Here we need to use user as the default user and password the one that was showing in the console window. This password. Copy this password and use here, then sign in. Now all the endpoints in our application are secure with the username and password. Once you've given the username and password and logged in Spring Security, you can access any endpoint. So here this is the output. Similarly, about us, all endpoints are working. So now question arises, this is the auto generated password. Can we customize it? Yes. We can add the configuration in application.properties and override the username and password. Stop the application, go to the application.properties file under resources and here we need to add security configurations. So first is username like admin, then password like 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8. Save it and execute the application. Now if you see in the logs, now there is no auto generated password we can see because we have already configured it in the application.properties file. So now refresh this documentation. It's asking username and password. So here we need to use admin and password is 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8. So now we logged in and can access any endpoint. So it's returning the response, means we are able to access all the endpoints. Now next question arises and next requirement is I want to make few endpoints public and few endpoints secure. So in order to do this, we have to provide custom security configurations. Create a Java class with any name, meaningful name like Spring, like security config. And here we need to use two annotations on class level. One is the @configuration and second we need to enable web security. So here we need to give custom configuration of security filter chain. So here configure the whitelisted URL, use method authorize HTTP requests. Here use request matcher and pass the URLs of those endpoints that you want to make public. Like in our case, we want AMP about us. Permit all and any other request must authenticate it and need to set up HTTP basic configuration as defaults. So here we need to handle the exception. We are throwing exception out of this method. So this is a very basic configuration to whitelist the endpoints. We created one class security configuration and used two annotations on class level @configuration and @enable web security. And here created one method security filter chain to initialize security filter chain and its return type is security filter chain. So here security filter chain is a interface and using this HTTP security a class, it's a final class. This class provides a method authorize HTTP requests and using request matchers method you can pass a number of endpoints to whitelist by separating with comma. Use method permit all means these endpoints we are permitting making public. Any other request and rest of the endpoints must authenticated. Configure HTTP basic configuration as with defaults and then build the object. We have done with the configuration to whitelist the endpoints. Now execute the application and check the public endpoints as well as the secured endpoints. Just execute the application. Application started. Now try Swagger API. So if I'm trying to access this Swagger UI, it's asking credentials. And if I will pass wrong credentials here, it will not allow me to access the Swagger UI as well as the other secured endpoints. But there is one endpoint we made as whitelisted and public, which is about us. So let's try this. Now this endpoint is invoked successfully and we can see the result of this endpoint. It's returning us the company information. So in the similar way, we can make as many as endpoint public. What we need to do, just here add comma and provide multiple endpoints URL to make these endpoints public. Till now in Spring Security, we configured one username and password in the application.properties file. So this username and password we can use to access the restricted APIs. But now question here, I want to maintain more than one users. So how we can maintain more than one users that can access this application? So in order to allow multiple users to access this application, we need to make few changes in the custom security configuration. Now go to security configuration class. So here we can use in-memory database or in-memory data. For now, what we need to do, we need to return an object of a class in-memory user detail manager, and this class has a constructor which accepts user details object. So here in create one more method, we can pass directly the user detail object here, or we can create a separate method as well. So let's create. So user details is a interface and it's in the package security.co.userdetails. User1. Now use inbuilt class user and provide the username like user1, password 1234567 or any password. So we created user1. So here one thing is very important to note. Right now we are not using any password encoder, but in future when we use JWT token and database for user details, we need to use password encoder. But here we are not going to use any password encoder. Then as per standard, we need to pass here noop before the password. Similarly, create another user or the user that you want, and then return this list as a collection. Import the required interfaces and classes. So now this list users method is responsible to create the users. To create a user, we are using user details interface and a user class, and we are providing username and password, and this method will return these all users in the form of collection. So here we are creating a collection with these user objects, and this list of user we are passing in the in-memory user data manager class constructor, and this in-memory user details manager class object we are returning from this method. So now in this application there are two users, user1 and user2. So we can create a number of users like this. We just need to create a user with this syntax and need to add in this collection. Simple. These are the steps to add multiple users. Save it and execute it. Try to open the Swagger UI. Let's try the user one. Password is 1234567 So we are able to access this application using user one. Let's try another user, user two. See, so here we used user two to access this application. We accessed the endpoints using Swagger, but all these endpoints we can access through the Postman as well. If we want to access these endpoints using Postman, all the restricted endpoints needs username and password. Let's see one example. Open Postman. Suppose here we have employee get endpoint, try to access it. So here you can see a tab authorization. Right now it's no authentication. See, here we are getting 401 HTTP status, which says you have no access to this resource. So here we need to pass username and password using basic authentication under the authorization, user1 and password. Now we given username and password, we can access. But if you want to access whitelisted endpoints, which is about us, see in the authorization, type is no authentication. We are not passing any username and password. Try to access it. So this endpoint is whitelisted. That's why we are able to access it without any username and password. So this is the way how to configure Spring security with in-memory database. In the coming videos, we will see how to use database to authenticate the users from the database.